Welcome back to Textiles and Treasures. Today I'm going to share day 2 of the massive Humane Society yard sale. When they told me everything would be 50% off on the second day of the sale, I decided to head back first thing in the morning, exactly when they opened at 8 a.m. This time I knew how it worked, and I knew that it was possible to store the things you bought over in a little cage while you kept browsing. So I definitely took advantage of that. I'm going to split this video into 2 parts because I did that well at the yard sale. So let's get started. As soon as I got to the sale, I headed straight to the board games. Since the games take up a little more space, I'll show them to you later on after I've shown you all of the glassware and hard goods. After picking out my favorite games, I headed over to the lamps, and I spotted this milk glass lamp. As you can see, it's got some hobnail here, and it's also got the trinket dish on the bottom. This lamp is a little bit different than the one I got the day before, and it has a little shade. I think the shade is a little too large for the lamp, but this lamp was only 50 cents, so I decided to get it and match it with the lamp I got the day before. From there, I headed over to the artwork. There were tons of people browsing in the artwork, and that's because it was a really good value, especially at 50% off. The first 2 pieces I spotted were these Crewel pieces that I had somehow managed to miss the day before. As you can see, this piece is a Crewel piece that says tea, and then this one is a Crewel piece that says sugar. I personally love tea, and I suppose I also love sugar, and these were definitely stitched by the same person and were a pair that belonged together. These were originally $1 and they were half off, so I paid 50 cents each. I love the detail on these 2 pieces. I also found 2 other Crewel pieces in another section. These were marked $3 originally, which meant they were $1.50 during the sale. As you can see here, this is a Crewel piece with a beautiful village design. This looks like a little chapel, and I just love the details of the trees, of the shading, the different colors of this particular village. Really, really pretty. I also like this piece that has a water wheel, and it also has beautiful trees in the background and the water flowing through the wheel. Really nicely done. I was really excited to pick up 2 more Crewel pieces, especially ones that have a landscape. I also found this darling, very, very tiny piece of art, which is a San Francisco cable car. I thought this was very nicely framed in a wood frame, and I loved that it was a hand-drawn piece. If you look closely, this says that it is the Hyde Street cable car by, I believe, Diamond Harrington. I'll have to put his name up on the screen for you. This piece was originally $1, which meant that I paid 50 cents on half off day. I also found another pair of beautiful watercolor. As you can see, they're in a really, really, really nice frame. Nice wooden frame. On the back, this one says that it's original and it's called Sugarin'. Because I live in New England, this is something that happens every spring. They tap the trees for maple syrup. This is a really, really beautiful wintry piece. The artist who created this piece is Nancy D. Gagnon. It appears that she was a fairly well-known watercolor artist until her death a few years ago. I'm really excited that I found this beautiful piece. Here's another original watercolor by the same artist. As you can see, this is a fall scene with a stone wall, another very typical New England scene. This is called Another Fence. Both of these pieces were originally $2, so I paid $1 for each of them. I also found this vintage painting, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I love the colors of the flowers, and I also love the design. What's cool here is that you can see that it's been signed by the artist, and it's dated 1953. I couldn't resist taking home this piece because it happens to be just as old as my mother. Probably shouldn't say that. This painting was 50 cents. Speaking of vintage pieces, I really thought this scene with mice and mushrooms was quite adorable. Really, really cute. This didn't have a frame, but it is signed that it was made by Janet in 1971, or perhaps gifted to Janet in 1971. I felt like this was definitely a blast from the past, and it had to come home with me for 50 cents. I also found this really cute scene with birds on a ledge. This is a quilted scene, but it had a very nice looking frame, and I thought it was really, really cute. It's perfect for a porch or another cozy country style setting. I paid 50 cents for this guy as well. I also fell in love with this beautiful piece. It's just a very simple island hanging out in the ocean, but there's something about the desolation of this picture that really, really drew me in. This is signed Greppo at the bottom. I love the simple colors and scenery in this particular piece. And once again, it has a nice wooden frame. I paid 50 cents for this piece. I also decided to get this quite sizable print of a dog. As you can see, it's nicely framed in a metal frame, and the beagle is really, really adorable. This was originally $3, $3 and I paid $1.50 for it. From there, I headed over to the collectibles section because I really didn't spend much time browsing the day before. There were a couple of things I had my eye on that I wanted to see if they're still there. The first thing I picked up in the collectibles section was this beautiful piece of cross stitch. I was really excited to find cross stitch in the collectibles section. I appreciated that they thought that this was well done and it had some value and it was worth keeping in the collectibles. As you can see, it's a beautiful wolf cross stitch and I love that it's in this nice gray frame. These are definitely more my colors than the 1970s pieces, and I think this will look really nice on a wall with some of my other simple prints. I also decided to browse the jewelry. However, there were a lot of people looking at all the different pieces of jewelry, so it was really hard to get in there and pick things out myself. So instead I just browsed the jewelry that said it was originally $1. I ended up paying $1 for 3 different pieces. The first thing I found was this pretty turquoise beaded necklace. As you can probably tell, I tend to wear a lot of sterling, and even though I do like these type of necklaces, I don't often buy them for myself. So for such a great price, I couldn't resist getting this really intricate, nice looking beaded piece. It's pretty, right? I also found this really neat beaded necklace. I loved the floral beads on here, and they definitely looked vintage to me based on some other jewelry I had. This is actually a really pretty piece when you wear it, and it has a nice drape to it. This was definitely worth picking up for less than $1. The last piece of jewelry I picked up was this silver toned pendant piece. It is not silver, it definitely sticks to a magnet, but I really think it's a great intricate design. I like wearing this piece when I'm going out to the yard sales or I'm going to the bins because it's something that has a nice secure clasp and I don't have to worry about losing it, but I can still look a little bit dressed up. This was definitely worth picking up as well. In the collectibles section, they had these 2 milk glass salt and pepper shakers. As you can hopefully see here, this is a grape pattern on the salt and pepper shakers. They're signed on the bottom and they're made by Imperial. I thought these were interesting looking and I hadn't seen any like them, but unfortunately I realized that there's actually quite a lot of damage to the top of the salt and pepper shakers. This is definitely peeling off on both of the salt and pepper shakers. However, I just paid $1 for both of these. I also decided to get this piece, and at the time I had no idea what it was, but I thought it was pretty. I liked the peaches. I love peaches in the summer. I thought the peach blossoms were pretty. I thought that all of it was really quite nice. And it was signed on the bottom, so I knew I would be able to get some information about it. But as it turns out, these are egg coddlers, which means you suspend them into the water in order to coddle your eggs, and they can be submerged in boiling water. And apparently they're very collectible because it ended up in the collectibles section, and they seem to be fairly desirable among a certain population. That was all that I managed to find in the collectibles section. I felt like the really good stuff was still out there on the floor, so that's where I headed next. Lucky for me, a lot of the pieces that I had my eye on the day before were still there, so I picked them up. If you've seen any of my other videos, this piece may look familiar. This is the Duncan & Miller teardrop pattern, but what's interesting about this piece is that it has etching all around the edges of this piece. As you can see here, there's etching along the top edge of this piece, all along the side here. There's a flower design here, if we can hopefully focus in on it here. And there's also some leaves on the bottom. I thought this was absolutely beautiful, but because I just picked up one of these pieces just a few days or weeks before, I wasn't really sure about it. But for $1.50, I was definitely going to take it home. I also found this interesting compote, a footed compote, and I decided I had to get it because I wanted to know what this pattern was. You probably have noticed I tend to be drawn to floral designs in my glassware. This pattern is really pretty all around the edges, and as it turns out, this is by Indiana Glass Company. This pattern is number 618, and it is the pineapple in floral pattern. This was made between 1932 and 1937. Yes, I identified it in one of my books. This cost $1. I also decided to pick up this simple rectangular candy dish. You may recognize the hobnail pattern on the bottom of this dish because I picked up a divided dish very similar to this a few weeks previous. I really like this design, and I have only seen this particular size and shape one time, and that's why I bought it. This dish was made by Anchor Hawking. I paid $1 for this. I also thought this oval candy dish was really interesting, and I hadn't seen anything like it. Very simple, but something that's definitely useful. It has a neat floral type design on the bottom, and it's perfect for serving different foods. I also paid $1 for this dish. I also came across one of these silver plate and formica dishes, and I seem to be amassing a bit of a collection of them. I liked that this one had a nice tall edge, and you may be able to see that it is signed here, and it says made in Italy. I paid $1 for this silver plated formica dish. I was super excited to come across this candlestick, which I had not seen the day before. If you look closely here, you can see that it has the floral design of sandwich glass. This is just a single daisy, which means that it is Indiana Glass Company. This is quite a sizable candlestick holder, nice and heavy, nice and sturdy, and I was really excited to add this to my sandwich glass collection. I also paid $1 for this. I also decided to pick up this beautiful etched candy dish in a nice, small, but useful shape. When I looked at this candy dish, I was fairly certain that it was Cambridge Glass Company, but I wasn't entirely sure because it has a different floral pattern than the ones I see all the time at the thrift store. I'll show on the screen what the name of this pattern is, but I really love it because it's not a rosebud, it's not roses, it's a different type of flower, and I think it's really, really pretty. And most of the time I see this in a divided candy dish, which isn't exactly a shape that I want to get a ton of things in, so I was happy to get this in a nice, very useful, deep bowl. I also paid $1 for this. Speaking of flowers and appreciating flower patterns, I decided to get this beautiful bowl with a beautiful flower on the bottom. I loved the design on this bowl, some ridging, some crisscrossing, and also the beautiful flower on the bottom, and I loved the way that it flowed at the top. I haven't been able to identify this pattern, and I haven't seen it anywhere else, so it was definitely a good buy for $1. The last two pieces I'm going to show you in today's video were pieces I knew were older and that I was definitely curious about. I decided to pick up this ruby flashed pitcher because I was fairly certain that it was EAPG, Early American Pattern Glass, and I think I was right. It's very hard to see here in the camera, but written in gold and very faded lettering on the top, it says Love the Giver. I really liked this cut design here on the bottom, and you can still see a little bit of the gold that would have been at the top. This pitcher is probably at least 100 years old, and these were often souvenir pitchers in this particular size. And because I knew that the next stop for these items was Goodwill and potentially the bins, I decided to pick it up for 50 cents. I also decided to pick up this vanity tray because I saw two of them, and one of them was marked $5 and this one was only $1, so it turned out to be 50 cents. I wasn't entirely sure what this was. I didn't know that it was a vanity tray, but it's probably a Victorian Art Nouveau, perhaps, vanity tray. It has a floral design here, which you may or may not be able to see because of the lighting here, and there are some very, very faint remnants of the gold all around the edges. Part of me wants to just remove the gold that's remaining in very, very limited quantities, and part of me knows that that's part of the piece and I should probably keep it there. This piece is actually quite heavy, and I definitely think it was a good buy for 50 cents. I was also super excited to come across this next item. As you can see here, I have a covered casserole dish. But what really surprised me is that you can actually see the etching here on the bottom. This is a Pyrex casserole dish with beautiful etching. As you may have seen in some of my other videos, I try to collect this etched Pyrex whenever I can. It's from some of the older pieces that are harder to find and definitely vintage or even antique. You can identify these older Pyrex by the coin dot that you see at the bottom of the casserole here. This very, very old logo tells you that it's a much older piece of Pyrex. This has seen some wear, but what else can you expect from something that's 90 to 100 years old? I really, really loved this. I was so excited to come across it, and I only paid $2.50 for it. Another piece I couldn't resist picking up was this very interesting wooden scoop. From watching YouTube videos, I knew that this was a grain scoop, and this one is probably intended for decorative use only. It has the fixture to hang it here on the back, and I think it will look nice on the wall with some flowers or something else decorative inside it. I couldn't resist picking this up for 50 cents. I have to admit that this piece was a bit of an impulse buy. It is quite sizable, probably larger than my head, but I couldn't resist because on the bottom it says American walnut. This is a nice, sturdy nut dish, and it really reminds me of my childhood because we used to have a smaller bowl and my mom would put nuts in it every Christmas holiday, and I would have so much fun cracking the nuts. This didn't come with the pieces, but those are easy to find. And this was only $1, and I couldn't leave behind this beautiful piece of wood. When I came across this piece, I overheard the employees saying that everything that was left over was going to be donated to Goodwill, so I felt like I wanted to get it first. So that's everything I'm going to show you in part 1 of the haul. There were a few things I had my eye on that I didn't want to leave behind. That's what I'll show you in part 2 of this massive yard sale haul, along with the board games. Leave a comment and let me know which item you like best of all the items I picked up at this Humane Society yard sale. Thanks again for stopping by my channel. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any other videos. See you in part 2. Have a good one. Goodbye.